Welcome to episode 4 of the 2001 Kawasaki KX250 build. We are picking up right where we left off at the end of episode 3, and what better to do on a Friday night during Rona season than enjoy a nice Moscow Mule and get some parts cleaned up. And I realized I did not order these two bearings, but they're still in really good shape. So if I can not get those dirty and nasty while cleaning this up, I'm gonna reuse them. Otherwise, I will order more. Alright, I'm about halfway done with my drink, and I've made some good progress. I did end up stripping these metal ones almost all the way. There's some spots I'm gonna have to get in there with the Dremel, but I used the coarse cleaning wheel to start, and then to get into some of the finer spaces, I use this because this will strip paint but not rip aluminum apart, whereas this wheel, if you push hard enough, will eat the aluminum up. As you can see from here, this thing was super chewed up before, and I applied some solid pressure with that and then that, and we have this chain slider looking almost brand new. So really happy about that. I did kind of ruin this. I thought this was just the paint moving around, but it's just kind of discoloring, and I did kind of ruin the plastic. So I'm just gonna order another one of these. They're literally like $15 on eBay in good shape. Well, I got these pieces mostly stripped, but there are some hard to reach places that it's just about impossible to get paint out of. So if I want these fully stripped, I think I'm gonna have to use some paint stripper, but this is really good progress, and with most of it gone, some paint stripper should go a long way. That's a task for another day. Overall, I'm pretty happy with these, and I think the polished look looks really nice. Stoked on how the chain slider turned out. Just about to finish my drink, so I think I'm gonna call that a Friday night. Gonna look at the parts diagram for the water pump real quick. I have this seal in the replacement kit, which looks like it would go there under the other water pump seal, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'm gonna pull up the parts diagram real quick for that. Yep, I was correct on that. That is that fat seal in there. It might be a little tricky to get out without removing this bearing, which I would like to reuse. So what I'm actually gonna do is put a block of wood here, put this in the vise, and press a socket through here to push them out. That's one way to do it. So aside from dropping this on the floor, that did work as desired. After a good hour or so of cleaning up this inner clutch cover, pretty darn happy with how it's looking. One positive to not being married is there's no one to tell me I can't use kitchen items in the garage for things like soak and clutch plates. Now all there is left to do is wait for the FedEx man and hope that I ordered everything I needed to get this bottom end together. The FedEx man never showed up on Saturday. Instead, he came Sunday, but at that point my roommate had his Land Cruiser torn apart, so the garage was unavailable. So like a kid on Christmas, I patiently waited until 6 a.m. Monday morning to start working on this engine before work. I just pulled the case out of the oven, gonna install the new seal, reinstall the crank bearing, install that bearing, and then this time we will dry fit it to see if everything spins the way it should. Engine bolts, I have this set from Fast Metric that has all of the bolts for the entire engine labeled. So here we've got all of the bolts I'll need for the crankcase, brand new and shiny. Transmission spins, crank does not, but it's just not centered in the case. So I'm gonna pull it a little bit, make sure the crank spins the way it should. This tool I'm using is the Tusk crank puller, really useful tool. This threads onto the crank and then presses against the case. Looks like that's it. So when I pop this off, I think we're gonna have a crank that spins freely. Crank spins. Tranny spins. Time to actually seal this thing together. It is always satisfying to see the bottom end of the engine go on stand, and the crank spins nice and freely, and the transmission feels smooth as butter. So upon inspecting what I have and what I need from the parts diagrams, I only ordered one of these snap rings, and I need a second one. I do have this brand new snap ring, although it's not the OEM Kawasaki part, it's just a hardware store snap ring. But with that said, it looks like it'll fit. I'm gonna install the idler gear and install this snap ring, and if this has any movement or play whatsoever, I'm gonna order the OEM one and wait. Unfortunately, this is gonna be a no-go. This snap ring isn't as wide as the OEM one, which is unfortunate because that prevents me from putting the clutch and everything on, but I can still get the whole shift mechanism installed to make sure that the transmission shifts through the gears properly. Okay, there was one other part I forgot to order, and it's the tiny little washer that goes on the other side of this for the shift mechanism. I thought I would just be able to use another washer, but it's a very particular size that allows it to sit within the spring and sit on this collar so that this can still spin freely. So I can't install this until I get that piece. I went through what I believe are all the gears and everything is working as it should. I got nervous for a second because I'm finding false neutrals in places, but when I give it proper force, I am able to find the gears. So I believe the transmission is all good. I think it is finally time to get these swing arm bearings replaced while I'm waiting for those couple engine components. I have this PivotWorks swing arm bearing kit all laid out with everything I'll need. Note that for this bearing, this is actually part of the linkage rebuild kit. So I still have these left over from my linkage rebuild kit. So I will be replacing all of these bearings using the vise method. Alright, old bearings and seals came out without too much of a hassle. Got everything cleaned up and looking nice. Gonna go ahead and get the new PivotWorks bearing and seal kit installed. There's just a little more material on the new chain guide. This evening, I am going to tackle the process of rebuilding the shock, or at least get started. As you can see here, I have two. Doing a little research, I found that this is either a 98 or a 99, and this is from the 01. Don't know how the guy ended up with two, but here I am. This is the shock I'll be rebuilding, which is convenient because it is in better shape anyway. I'm going to be doing the spring, Kawasaki green, the color that this frame was OEM, and I have this PivotWorks shock repair kit to get this thing rebuilt. I have all of the shock components cleaned up and now it is ready for the rebuild. I am going to dye this PivotWorks shock bumper black because I think it'll look much better using some RIT Dymore, which I learned from Cameron Yamala, and it works really well. I did this on one bike previously. One thing to note if you're using the PivotWorks shock rebuild kit is it only comes with one snap ring. There are identical snap rings in both the piggyback and the shock body. I happen to have one that's still in really good shape and I managed to not bend it at all on its way out, which is actually pretty uncommon. So I would recommend buying a second ring if you're going to be rebuilding your shock using one of these PivotWorks repair kits. The shock bumper is now black. That dye is super effective. Very happy with how the shock turned out, and also very happy with my decision to go green on the shock spring. I was a little bit on the fence about the color, but I'm very happy how it turned out, and I think it's gonna look great on the bike. This rebuild honestly went very smoothly. Right now I just have some air in it to make sure that it doesn't leak and everything seals properly, but I'll be taking it over to Mike at Deja Moto to get some nitrogen put in there. All right, that is a wrap for episode 4. I really wanted to get the bottom end all the way together, like I said in the last episode, but I am waiting on one washer that was supposed to get here today, but is going to get here tomorrow. And tomorrow I'm getting some plates removed from this collarbone. So back in October, I got this shoulder fixed for dislocations, and since I'm already recovering, I really don't like the hardware in this collarbone, so I'm getting it removed. So that's happening tomorrow. I won't be allowed to bear weight for another few weeks, so I'm gonna be a little gimpy for a while, but I will get back to building the bike whenever I can. And by that point, I think I'll have the cylinder back. So fingers crossed, in the next episode, I should be able to get the entire engine done. I have a box of new parts here. I got some fresh rubber from Shinko today that's gonna go great on this bike, so just absolutely stoked about how this build is coming together. Anyway guys, I always appreciate your feedback, so if you have any comments, leave them down below. Thanks a million for watching, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode. I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas.